session on the real world case study. When we talk of the real world case study, we could have some of the really great learning experience from somebody like Jason and Rina. They are talking about the how to build and monetize an enterprise API marketplace. Okay. Hey Jason. Hey Rina.
Hi,
Please
Shrey.
welcome on this stage. Yes, stage is all yours. We are super excited to learning about the marketplace.
All right, great. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you, Jason.
Okay, great. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So let's jump right in. There will be a poll that's available on the side that the team is going to help us put up just to help us understand what industries are here represented with us today. It'll help put some context to the conversation as we continue. So while the team is putting that up, we'll start with the introductions, and I'll introduce myself and hand to Rina. So my name is Jason Cumberland. I'm the Chief Product Officer at a company called HyperCurrent, and we focus on API monetization. I work with clients every day to help them leverage their API ecosystems to generate new revenue. And before this, I had a lot of time working in sales and product management. Rina, over to you.
Thanks, Jason. My name's Rina. I work for IQVIA. We're the largest CRO and healthcare data company, but we also have a lot of technology products. And I build the API marketplace for IQVIA that is focused mostly on healthcare and life sciences type of APIs. And prior to IQVIA, I worked building a lot of e-commerce products for Fortune 500 companies. But my everyday job at IQVIA currently is evangelizing the power you can unleash by unbundling a lot of your products and offering them as APIs.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, let's dive into it. So we'll first start off and talk about what's happening in the world of API monetization and a bit of best practice, and then towards the end of this presentation and throughout, Rina will give her own experience working with IQVIA on monetizing their API marketplace, and then we'll hopefully have some time for Q&A at the end if we stay on time. All right, so first some context for today's discussion. There's two types of API monetization at the highest level, direct and indirect. And so indirect on the right side of the slide are companies like eBay, Google, or Instagram, where they are releasing a rich API, a set of APIs with the goal of attracting more developers and users to their platform so that they can then monetize the users per their normal application, but the APIs themselves are free. On the other side, we have direct API monetization. And this is what companies like Equifax and IQVIA are doing. You hear a lot about that today, or Fiserv. And examples of those would be Fiserv has a rich set of wealth management products where they can integrate the services that they offer into other systems, and those are pay-per-use or subscription type services. Or Equifax, which you might be familiar with, does credit reporting or loan suitability reporting for customers, and those are, again, pay-per-use or subscription-based products. And that's most of what we'll be talking about today if you're looking to directly monetize the APIs that you are building within your own company. So let's look at, from our experience in HyperCurrent, working with clients, what do we see as the industries that are leading the monetization charge? And there's really two that come above all the rest. Between these two, they represent about 70% of the companies that we work with. So on the healthcare and life sciences side, you'll get lots of information today on an example of the types of monetization happening there. And in financial services, we see a lot of interest from really two types of financial services opportunities. One is companies that are being disrupted, so traditional banking who are being disrupted by financial services startups. And in that case, the banks are having to enrich their API ecosystems in order to interoperate with the fintech startups that are disrupting them. If you think about an example on the banking side, banks can have the choice of being the bank of choice for the companies that are disrupting them. It's sort of a best second place that they can choose. And by having a set of APIs that the fintech startups can use, they can oftentimes open a new revenue stream by making themselves the most agile banks that those companies can work with. And then the fintech startups, who are oftentimes working in underserved geographies where traditional banking doesn't have reach into all the population, those startups are directly monetizing their APIs to allow third-party companies to access that population of customers. And in both of these industries, this is not the traditional developer to developer monetization where the end goal is pennies per click or dollars per click. The end goal is large value subscriptions. And one of the best examples I can give of this is GlaxoSmithKline and 23andMe 4 or 5 years ago started a partnership that was a $300 million partnership over 5 years. And that was for access to data for GlaxoSmithKline to get access to that genomic data from 23andMe. And that was just renewed again this last year for another $50 million. And that's the end goal for the enterprises. They're trying to release low friction monetized API marketplaces, which Rina will talk about today, with the end goal of signing large multi-year partnerships or high dollar partnerships in the end with those types of companies. So let's jump on from there. The main drivers for monetization, to give a bit of a preview on the last slide, there's really two ways people get into this. One, because you're moving on the front foot and you look around your industry and you realize we actually have an ecosystem here where we could extend our existing product set or unbundle something we already do by providing API only access to our offerings. And that's where hopefully you are in this, that you see opportunity. But the other one that happens equally as often, and I gave the example of the banking world, is because you look around and you realize that your traditional suite of services or products is being unbundled and that someone else is picking at the edges of your offering by releasing API only offerings. And in that case, you have no choice and you step forward and you look for defensive means to unbundle your own products and sometimes even cannibalize your own products with an API only offering to avoid being further disrupted by your partners or by your competitors. So let's go on to the next slide. Now we'll move into a bit of the practical advice on how to get to minimum viable product if you are thinking that you might have a set of APIs that you can monetize. And as I go through this section, I'll offer what we see as best practices that we talk to our clients about. And then Rina will interject with her own experience from IQVIA. And you'll see that sometimes best practice is what worked for IQVIA, and just like the real world, sometimes that wasn't exactly what worked for IQVIA. And Rina will explain each of those that in their own experience. So before we jump into some of the tips, the two most important things I'll lead with are the misconceptions that we often deal with our clients. And that is that oftentimes we enter the conversation about API monetization with a motivated technologist that sees an opportunity in the API ecosystem to perhaps make money on their APIs. But there's no business partnership that has come along with that conversation. And the thought is, well, if we build a good enough API, that the business will take care of itself. And the reality is, unfortunately, that it cannot be a project that is led only by technology. Technology is critical, obviously, to make it happen in the world of APIs, but there needs to be strong business partnership to make it work. And the reality is that the best way, rather than build it and they will come, is to find a partner who has expressed interest already and to build your first offering together with your partner. And I'll explain how that's relevant as we go through several of these steps going forward. Okay, so we'll start with the technical. As I mentioned, the technical is important, and then we'll move on to the business side. So I would consider all the things you see on the page here as table stakes if you're really going to look forward to monetizing your API ecosystem. And a lot of these are provided by the API gateway. And so in our case, Rina and I work together with MuleSoft to pull these things off with their gateway, and then the HyperCurrent technology fills in the gaps on some of the monetization specific elements. So on the top, you need a dev portal. And the reason you need a dev portal is you need a place for your potential users to come and shop your APIs. And the most relevant place to monetize your APIs is generally the dev portal. And sometimes in a large enterprise case, you're not going to enable self-service sign up and payment, and that's fine as well. But in the case that you want to, the best place to do it is in the dev portal. Credential management, offer management means the ability to bundle together APIs into an offer aimed at a target market. And then the metering and rating is sort of self-explanatory. As transactions come through the gateway, there needs to be technology that can apply the metering and rating that the customers have signed up for. And then, of course, if you are in a world of selling access to your APIs, you need to be able to produce invoices and ultimately manage your SLA that you're offering to your clients to ensure that they get what they pay for. All right, the good news is the technical piece is not that complicated. The bad news is it's probably the smallest piece to get right in the overall quest to monetize your API ecosystem. And so we'll go through each of these now, the rest of these, with a bit of tips on what's important in the realm of product management, finance, and so on. Okay, so product packaging and pricing, in all of these, our goal, this section is
So
titled,
Jason, can I
yes,
interject on the last slide?
yes, please, Rina, go ahead.
So yeah, I just wanted to give a little bit of an example on the readiness piece, like what we did. And in our scenario, I think the best case for us, the reason it worked out for us was we had a really visionary leader up in the, high up on the chain who got that looked at the market, said the market is going, the API economy is up and running, and we have about 1,000 plus APIs within IQVIA. Let's look at how we can have this convergence of the two things meeting, right? So that is important, to have a leader who believes, has a vision. And we had that. And then he brought me in to then do the grind of actually figuring out which APIs were commercially viable, and then getting this off the ground, right? So for us, we lucked out because of the leadership that saw the writing on the wall. And so we were on Jason's earliest slide, if you remember, the one with the two kids doing the judo or karate. We were actually, thankfully, on not the defensive side. We were more on the offensive side, which is that we were ready, we saw it, and we jumped in. So that was part of our success criteria.
So Rina, just a follow-up question. In your case, would you say the project was led by technology or led by business, or was it 50-50?
I would say it was led by business first, seeing that there is an opportunity here, especially since the healthcare market for APIs was pretty small cut of a big pie that was growing exponentially. And then technology already was going through this whole API first mentality of building that way. And so they were sort of there, except they were not being led by business till business said, we're going to do this. So
Great.
It was more of a business driven initiative.
Great. Okay. So product packaging and pricing, the concepts we're going to go through for the next several of these are, like the section is titled, How to Get to a Minimum Viable Product. It is not about how to release the best monetized API in the most amount of time. It's the opposite. It's how to release an adequate product quickly so that you can learn from your first product release and not spend a year getting to market. So product pricing can be really difficult, especially if you don't have a lot of competition for the offering that you're going to put out there. And for that reason, a lot of companies obsess about what they should charge for this offering because they've never done it before. And in our experience, the best way to do this is not to obsess about your final market price until, if you have that first partner who's going to build with you, they can help you answer a lot of the questions about pricing. And we recommend a concept from the media world a lot that's called value testing, which means that your first partner, in exchange for a discount for their first several years of subscription, will open the books to you in terms of the value they've received from using your product. You can also agree ahead of time to do a not to exceed price. So if you say, we know the value is more than $50,000 a year and therefore it will be limited to that, as an example, no matter how much value we provide. But I know in Rina, in your case, you did not launch with an initial partner and you had kind of another strategy that you followed, if you want to interject on this one.
Yeah, we were actually lucky to actually have some competition in the initial set of NLP APIs that we launched. So what we did was we set ourselves apart from them by differentiating through messaging and pricing, value pricing, to sort of say, this is why we're different. Yes, there's others who do NLP as well, but we're different because we understand healthcare and we've used and dog fooded it ourselves. So the pricing for us was more of a science rather than art in this kind of scenario. But what I would say to Jason's case, we do have some APIs where the owners are extremely skittish about not knowing how to price it. For them, I say the same thing, like what problem will this solve for your customer? And how are they solving that problem currently is obviously not optimal. Figure out what they pay for that suboptimal solution and then price it strategically in a way to make it attractive for them to use something that's more automated versus what they have currently. So it depends on whether the API you have already has competition. Then it becomes slightly easier if you can message it right and differentiate and position your product well. And if it's not, then obviously go with what problem are you solving and how do they solve it? What do they pay for that? That's been our general approach.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the next one, commercial and financial, closely related to pricing, is working with your finance team to understand how much money you're going to make ultimately on this offering. And so in the early days, this is a very even harder question to answer than what are you going to charge, because all of your costs are not known. And in most cases, the companies that we're working with are not software companies. And so they're used to being healthcare companies or banks, and they haven't released software before. And that's a very different business model with high fixed costs and almost no variable costs. And so the important thing here is making sure that as you're working through the initial stages, that your finance team understands that you're releasing for one or two or three customers, you're doing a proof of concept to figure out what your ultimate costs will be, and that cost recovery doesn't happen on the first customer like it does in some other business models. And then lastly, there's often a desire or a thought that we need to deeply integrate with ERP and solve all of those hard problems on day one. And until you have dozens of customers, everything can be done manually, and that really should be the approach, because all this fancy integration up front may not be the best use of your time. Rina, you can do
Yeah,
your
and I
opening here.
completely agree with that. That's been our approach too. Has been, we honestly right now what finance gets from us is an Excel spreadsheet,
Yep.
and they upload it manually. So we've gone with that because that's not the problem we're trying to solve right now. We're trying to get adoption, and we're trying to get big numbers on the top of the funnel.
Okay. Rena, I'm going to move through the next of these a little quickly because I want to make sure you have time at the end. So security, legal, and compliance, the keys here are to involve them early. Again, make sure that if you're working with a partner up front, the advantage here will be that the partner already has a contract with you. That's a huge advantage not to have to work through on the first time. And Rena, we have like about 5 or 8 minutes left. So if you're okay, I'll just jump through to where you're going to do your walkthrough of your marketplace at the end. I'll just go through these quickly. There's a general trend on sales and marketing enablement on both of those, that the key here is to make sure you're on the radar for both of those teams. But in both cases, you don't want to do any formal sales and marketing and enablement until your first product is launched with your first customer, because that's the point at which you'll have a happy customer who can be quoted in the media. And of course, that's a part of their participation. And your sales team would much rather hear about this once you have a live working example. The reason we bring both of them up is because oftentimes companies think they need to figure all this out in the beginning, and that is not best practice, and it will not be a great use of your time. Same thing with customer service and support. This is your job during this phase. You don't want to outsource it, and you need to make sure the key thing is capture the questions that your partner raises during this, because this can become your help script for your customer support team when you launch, which will save you a ton of time when you actually launch if you have the questions pre-documented. Rina, any comments on that group that I've gone through quickly there?
Yeah, the whole model for API marketplace is that it's low cost and self-serve. So we've tried to automate our customer support as much as possible and make it as easy for customers to get to us, and the answers are easier to access. And even for our teams to solve problems, they're automated from start to finish, all the way into the creating tickets into the Jira boards that the dev teams work off of. That's important, and keeping a stable platform is very important too.
Okay, great. All right, Rina, I will let you narrate this portion.
All right, so I mean, the proof of the pudding isn't actually a working marketplace. So this is a little video that I'm going to narrate as you see the different screens go through. Our marketplace is live. We've got about 6 NLP, natural language processing APIs, take unstructured documents, mostly in the healthcare and life sciences industry. And then they go through those unstructured texts and pull out certain entities that you're looking for that are important and digitize it so that you can use that to build applications around either analytics, see trends in patient cohorting, or any other such life sciences related or healthcare related application that you're building, right? Jason, if you press the button, it should change. No.
It doesn't look like it's going to play, Rina. You just have to paint a
All
picture.
Right. We had a video that would actually show you all the screens. Unfortunately, it's not playing. But this whole API is now, the marketplace along with the APIs is now live. At the end of the presentation, we actually have a QR code which you can use in order to get access to this marketplace. Next slide, Jason actually talks about those APIs
Okay.
that we've got live. As you can see there, obviously we're a healthcare and life sciences company. So this is what we do well. And this is why when we priced some of these APIs, we knew exactly how to differentiate ourselves because we are experts in this. We do it ourselves and we do it for our customers. We have about 200 million such unstructured documents, that EMR data, that either you can use the APIs to extract entities from those documents, or you can even bring your own documents and have those extracted and digitized via these APIs. So that's the general idea of these APIs. And that's about it that I had, Jason.
So Rina, since we have now a couple of minutes, I will add here that I think one learning for us as well as IQVIA through this, that a lot of healthcare companies wouldn't expect that this can be done. I mean, you are dealing with incredibly sensitive healthcare data, and you've managed to do it the right way with help from your security team. And maybe talk for just a minute about your experience of getting that right, because this was complex.
Yes. So the complexity, especially being in a highly regulated industry like ours, was that we had legal, we had compliance, we had technology compliance. So we had all like three entities that were making sure that the data was safe and that we were only bringing in people that could access the data through highly secured means. And that's where MuleSoft and HyperCurrent both had to go through the compliance regulatory body and, be given access to then work with us. I will tell you this, that the first API that we took through legal compliance and technology compliance, all of those, it was difficult because I had to build a whole matrix around all the different things that had to be, like GDPR compliance, HIPAA compliance, all of these we had to get check. Once we went through that, this subsequent APIs became a lot easier too, because we knew then what we were doing and how we could guide our API owners through the process, including our vendors like MuleSoft and HyperCurrent. So yes, it's necessary in a regulated industry like ours, but it gets easier after the first few APIs have passed muster.
Great. So we're almost wrapped up. If anyone has questions, you can start putting them in the side. We'll just do a couple conclusion slides here. So if you look at the combination of best practice and what Rina and the team went through, our key advice would be that there's probably advice somewhere, there's demand somewhere in the organization right now for API-backed products. And the places to look are to go talk to your sales team, your customer success team, or your support teams. There may be people asking if you haven't seen competition moving into this area. At the front end, you want to make sure you have executive sponsorship on the business and technology teams, like Rina talked about. And then it's super important to tackle your simple use cases first as you're getting out of the gate, because complexity can follow later. And then one thing that's not on the slide that we've learned a lot lately is that there's a lot of temptation from companies to say we are not going to release an API-backed product until we are more mature operationally and ready to do that. And the funny thing is, the opposite is always true, that if you see an opportunity for revenue from your products, that technical maturity will produce itself, because revenue drives maturity, and it's not the other way around. Waiting forever to become more mature with no revenue in sight almost never works. So if you see an opportunity, make sure you push forward for it, because once the opportunity is seen by the teams that run the business, the funding will follow to push your project. And so just on our last slide, if you don't have time to ask questions today and you want to reach out to us, Rina and I are both on LinkedIn, and then the QR code that Rina mentioned is here if you look to sign up for the products that Rina's talking about. Rina, anything you want to add in conclusion?
No, I'll just say that, just like Jason said, you'd rather be on the cutting edge and leading edge of when you see that, there's a trend in the API technology side of the house. Rather catch that wave than be sort of left behind. And so I'm glad IQVIA actually, I would say we are leading that trend, and we weren't on the defensive side. It's always good to be on the offensive side.
Okay. Thank you very much for hosting us, team. We appreciate it.
Hey Jason and Rina, thank you very much for sharing about the bidding marketplace for the APIs. It was quite learning session on the product prioritization, the team building, and the everything that you have shared. Yeah, thank
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.